Hey there, writers and muse daters. I'm super excited to be coming at you today with one of our amazing Writing Gym members, Odell Isaac. He is in the revision phases. So welcome, Odell.
Thank you very much.
So tell us a little bit about the novel that you're writing.
It's a detective story, which is my favorite kind of book to read. And my main character is is helping the health department find someone who's HIV positive, and he has to go into like the roughest housing project in the city to do that. And things just sort of spiral into craziness from there.
Right, as he works to solve this case.
Right.
Great. And I've kind of got the inside scoop on the progress that you're making, but share with the people who are here watching. Tell us a little bit about where you were when this whole process started. You know, before we met, what did your writing life look like then?
Well, I had been trying for years to put something like this together. And then November of 2018, I participated in National Novel Writing Month, and I barely squeaked out 50,000 words, and I think the end were two of those words. And I took that and, added little bits and pieces of it until I had something that at least had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I had stumbled across the Writing Gym page on Facebook. And while I was celebrating that, I heard from you. And you said, this is great, congratulations. What's your next step? Which I hadn't thought of. I was too busy doing my victory dance from this step.
Which is a good thing. We like to celebrate.
It was, but what I had wasn't something that I would feel comfortable trying to send to an agent or a publisher. I'm so much closer to that today, and I'm very excited about it.
I'm excited for you. So walk us through that, right? So we talked a little bit about where you were, and so then walk the people in the group through, how did you become a member of the Writing Gym? How did life change once you were in the Writing Gym? What does that look like from your perspective as a participant?
Well, after I heard from you, we had a long conversation on the phone about what I wanted, not just from this novel, but in general as a writer. And, stuff came out that I didn't even know was in there. And we just talked about how to go about doing those things. It's one thing to want something, but it's another to have a plan, a concrete plan with steps to take.
Mm-hmm. And here we're talking about your publishing career as far as the number of books you're going to write and
right,
and that kind of thing.
Right. So at the end of it, actually the first conversation we had, you had me send the first 20 pages of the manuscript. Then we called back, you called back, and we had a much longer conversation. And from that, I ended up joining the gym, not really having any idea what I was getting myself into.
How did that feel, not knowing what you were getting into? You've sent your baby, your manuscript to this woman. Where were you there emotionally?
Very nervous, but excited too, because I was taking a step that I had never taken before. I didn't know what was out there, but I figured it was going to represent forward motion. It was going to take me further than I had been in this process.
Got it. And so, for the people who are watching, hello watchers, I can see you out there. Please post your questions in the comments if you have them. For the people who are watching, what did that look like when you enrolled? You sent in your manuscript, and then what?
Well, we started, well, I'm not sure how to answer that, but except that the gym analogy is very apt. The great thing about the writing gym is the accountability of having someone get you to work out every day, and to have those same people, comment on your results. It's one thing for you to look at your own writing and see, a maturity in it, which I do, but it's gratifying when other people see the maturation of your writing process as well. The salons, for people who don't know what the salons are, where everybody gets together and writes for what you claim is 20 minutes, but I still am not entirely certain about that. And then we get together and share each other's writing, and those sessions are illuminating and energizing. And back to the gym analogy, working out is more fun when you can do it with some friends.
Absolutely. And, I'm going to make a guess, and you can tell me if this feels right for you. But if you've ever been to a real gym and you get into that room with all the workout equipment, and it looks like it could maybe be torture equipment, you're not quite sure what to do with it, or like where your arms go. But having somebody to come and say, okay, here's the benefit of this exercise, here's how to use this, here's how much weight you should be lifting, that kind of thing. I would imagine that there's some kind of analogy there in your writing, as you think about that gym analogy.
That's absolutely true, because especially when you start at the writing gym, because the big question is always, what do I do? So it's good to have those kind of instructions. This is what you do, this is how you do it, this is when we're going to check in on your progress, now just go. So yes, that is absolutely appropriate.
So one of the things that I love about our work together, Odell, you and I were speaking earlier this week, and you said that you were at a point where you were really starting to see some progress in your writing. So when you opened your manuscript, walk us through what that looked like for you.
Well, I had been writing scenes to add to this manuscript. And so when I opened the manuscript and started looking at it, I almost didn't recognize the writing. I'd come so much further that it almost looked like it had been written by somebody else. But the encouraging part of that is that I've been in the gym since last June, and I've come so much further, and I am stronger as a writer. So I can look at that and say, that is not the greatest writing I've ever done, but I can fix that. I can fix that. I can make it better. Yeah.
That's amazing. And, one of our taglines that we have out there is helping you find your best writer, which is a little bit nebulous in its definition. What does that mean for you?
Well, I felt like, I don't think you can join something like the writing gym if you don't already believe that you have some writing ability. So I felt like I had the tools to do this, but now all my tools feel like new tools and sharper tools. Everything just feels like just better and more. I thought I was a good writer before. Now I really, really believe that I am. And I really believe when I see those names at the bookstores and the library that my name is going to be up there next to those names. I never really felt that before, but I do now.
Amazing, Odell. Congratulations. That's a beautiful feeling. And I want to go back to your analogy of the toolbox, because I think that there are a lot of programs out there, if we kind of use that toolbox analogy, you come up to their door and they're like, oh no, like don't use a screwdriver, don't use a hammer, like, here's a wrench instead. And then you have to sort of figure out how to use a wrench, even if it isn't your best tool, if you're following my analogy.
I do.
In the writing gym, we sort of open your kit and we say, all right, you've got a screwdriver, you've got a hammer, and wrench isn't your thing. Let's move forward with this. So talk a little bit about that experience and how it benefited you.
Well, the biggest benefit that I've gotten from this is just a self-belief that I never really had before. The tools that I do have, the tools that work best for me, are tools that can work for my genre, for my novel. It's just a matter of knowing how to apply those tools. And that's what the writing gym, one of the things that it does really well is points you in the right direction for your writing. Because, there are probably a lot of writers out there who have writing talent. They don't really, really know what to do with it yet.
That's a really powerful distinction, because I bet a lot of writers are in that exact spot and feeling frustrated, I would imagine.
I know that I did, because I felt like I had this ability, but I felt like I had this ability 10 years ago, and 10 years has gone by, and I didn't feel like I was any further along in the process of writing a book and getting it into shape to be published.
How do you think your life would have been different if you had run into the writing gym 10 years ago?
Oh gosh. A lot different. I'd be writing for a living, And what I tell people is that, in my day job, I'm a substitute teacher. So I call myself a substitute teacher and a writer. What I want to call myself is a writer and substitute teacher. I feel closer and closer and closer to that. I was nowhere near it, 9 months ago.
Wow, that's really amazing. What progress. And I know you've had this conversation with writers in your life. I know you're at the library a whole lot. You talk to people about books. So, when you talk about the writing gym and people say, well, I don't know, why should I join? What do you tell them?
Well, the thing to tell them is that, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. If you've been writing for years and years and years and you haven't gotten any further, what should you do? Find someone who's in the business, who's credentialed, put your trust in that person and do what they tell you. It's what you do at a gym. You know what I mean? If you want to get in shape, you find this personal trainer, you put your trust in that person and you do what they tell you to do. The writing gym is very much like that. Another thing I'd like to mention is that you have days where you just don't really feel like working out and you just feel mentally and emotionally exhausted and you don't feel like bothering with it. Another thing that the writing gym does is help you with that. Gretchen is fantastic for that. You talk to her for just half an hour, a week, and it helps recharge your mental batteries and always renews my enthusiasm for my work.
Yeah, and so Gretchen, she's our mindset coach, our personal trainer.
Yes.
In the writing gym, because fear can rear its ugly head in all kinds of ways. That
it really does.
It sneaks up on you, and I know in your journey, just as in my journey, I mean, you've had those moments of panic, of deep fear and then, booing yourself out of it, especially in those talks with Gretchen.
Right. Talking about those anxieties and, getting reassurances is, for me anyway, it's a really important part of the process. It helps keep me moving forward because, every day you don't necessarily feel, the creative juices flowing every day.
Absolutely. And, I've never thought to ask anyone this, so I'm interested in your perspective. So my philosophy in creating the Writing Gym was really to create a space that didn't just address one book, that didn't just address one writer, but addresses you as a whole person, because that's what you bring to your writing and to your publishing career. And that's just important to me because of my personal beliefs and what I know about how the brain works. But how do you receive that, Odell? How does it feel to be treated like a whole person when we think about your book and your writing career?
Well, it's very reassuring. It's changed. What it's done is it's changed the way I feel about myself, the way I talk to other people about my writing. And I didn't used to be very comfortable about it, by the way. People like to ask me, how's the writing going? It's going fine. Now they can't shut me up. I am so glad you asked about that. And, I feel very good about it. And feeling very good about that has made me feel better about other aspects of my life too. Just it's helping everything else fall into place, at least the things that I can control, because you can't control everything.
Sure. Sure. Well, that is a wonderful celebration, Odell. I mean, I feel like I can't even summarize and do it justice with the number of things that you shared with us today and how you have grown over the last few months, as a writer, as a person, how your book has changed, how you've matured as a writer, how you've sharpened the tools in your toolbox, gotten some new tools in your toolbox. I mean, I think we've got 20 things to celebrate in today's live celebrations. But congratulations to you and your hard work to make this happen for yourself.
Well, thank you. I couldn't have done it without the gym.
That's wonderful. Thank you for taking the time to celebrate with us. I really appreciate it, Odell. And let's wish everyone from the Writing Gym, until next time.
Happy writing.